Why do so many ancient cultures share identical myths and symbols? What if I told you the most famous stories you know, like Noah's Ark, are copies? That they're just the latest version of a story told for thousands of years by people all over the world who never, ever met? It's not just one story. We're talking about great floods, world-devouring serpents, pyramids, and powerful symbols that pop up in ancient Egypt, in ancient Mexico, in ancient China, and beyond. How did civilizations, separated by vast oceans and centuries of time, all come up with the same ideas? It's one of history's greatest puzzles, and today, we're going to try and solve it. The global blueprint. Let's start with the big one, the Great Flood. You know the story of Noah from the Bible. God gets angry, decides to wipe the slate clean with a worldwide flood, tells one good guy to build a giant boat, save his family, and 2 of every animal. The rain falls, the world floods, and they eventually land on a mountain to restart humanity. But nearly 2,000 years before the Hebrew version was written, the Mesopotamians told the story of Utanapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh. A god warns him of a coming flood to destroy mankind. He's told to build a massive boat, save his family, animals, and skilled craftsmen. The boat lands on a mountain, and he releases birds to see if the water has receded. Sound familiar? It doesn't stop there. In ancient India, the first man, Manu, is warned by the god Vishnu about a massive flood. He builds a boat, and Vishnu, in the form of a fish, pulls him to safety on a mountaintop. In Greek mythology, Zeus sends a flood to punish humanity. The Titan Prometheus warns his son Deucalion, who builds a chest, survives with his wife, and lands on Mount Parnassus. Even in the Americas, the Aztec, Maya, and Lakota people all have their own powerful flood myths, featuring a few chosen survivors who repopulate the world. These cultures had no known contact. They couldn't text each other or share stories on the internet. So how did they all have the same terrifying tale of destruction and rebirth? And it's not just floods. Look at the idea of a world tree, or an axis mundi, a cosmic pillar connecting the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. In Norse mythology, it's Yggdrasil, the giant ash tree whose branches cradle the universe. In Mesoamerica, the Maya revered the ceiba tree, whose roots reached into the underworld and branches held up the sky. Even the story of Jack and the Beanstalk is a distant echo of this magical plant, connecting our world to a world of giants in the sky. It's the same basic blueprint, just with different paint. Then you have the symbols, pyramids for instance. We think of Egypt, but there are more pyramids in Sudan than in Egypt. And halfway across the world, you have the massive pyramids of the sun and moon in Teotihuacan, Mexico, and the jungle-covered pyramids of the Maya. These cultures did not know each other, yet they all decided the best way to honor their gods or bury their kings was to build a giant, triangular stone mountain. Why? The problem with the simple, easy answer is that these ideas just spread. This is the diffusion theory. Ancient people traveled, traded, and fought, and their stories traveled with them. A cool story about a flood, told by a sailor in a Mesopotamian port, could, over centuries, eventually make its way to Greece and India. This makes sense for places that were connected, like Europe and Asia, but it gets a lot trickier when you have to cross an ocean. How did the story of a great flood, or the idea for a pyramid, cross the Atlantic Ocean thousands of years before Columbus? There's no evidence of regular contact between the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Mayans. They developed in complete isolation from one another, so the simple idea that everyone just copied each other starts to break down. It doesn't explain the really big jumps across time and space. The puzzle is much deeper than that. The similarities are too specific, too widespread to be a simple coincidence or a game of telephone. So, if they weren't all copying from the same page, what's going on? Exploring the how. This is where things get really interesting and a little wild. When faced with a mystery this big, you get some big theories to try and explain it. One of the most popular, especially on the internet, is the ancient astronaut theory. The idea is that the similarities exist because the teachers were the same for everyone. Aliens, extraterrestrial visitors came to Earth long ago, kick-started civilization on multiple continents, and gave our ancestors a sort of Civilization 101 starter pack. This pack included math, astronomy, architecture and myths. The gods in the stories, they say, weren't gods at all. They were advanced beings with technology our ancestors couldn't understand, so they described them in supernatural terms. It's an exciting idea, but it's a huge claim that comes with basically zero hard physical evidence. A slightly more down-to-earth, but still epic theory, is the idea of a single, lost mother culture. Think of Plato's Atlantis. The theory goes that a highly advanced global civilization existed maybe 12,000 years ago or more. They were masters of engineering and had a rich mythology. Then, a global catastrophe, maybe a comet impact, or the end of the Ice Age, wiped them out. The few survivors scattered across the globe, carrying the memories of their world with them. They became the teachers of the Egyptians, the Sumerians, and the Mayans, passing down the core ideas of pyramids and flood myths. This would explain the global similarities neatly. Again, it's a fascinating theory, but one that relies on finding evidence of a civilization that, right now, remains completely hidden from us. But what if the answer isn't buried under the sea or lost in the stars? What if the secret has been inside us all along? The human blueprint. In the 20th century, the brilliant psychologist Carl Jung proposed a mind-blowing idea: the collective unconscious. Think of it like this. Your computer's hardware is your brain. The operating system, the basic software that comes pre-installed before you add any of your own files or programs, is the collective unconscious. Jung believed that all humans, everywhere, are born with this shared mental inheritance. It's a collection of fundamental patterns, instincts, and symbols that he called archetypes. These are the building blocks of human experience. The hero, the brave figure who faces danger to save others, the great mother, the nurturing, life-giving figure, but who can also be a destructive force, like Mother Nature herself, the wise old man, the mentor who offers guidance and wisdom, the shadow, the dark side, the repressed instincts and fears we all have, the trickster, the mischievous rule-breaker who often brings change, whether good or bad. Jung's theory suggests that when different cultures, completely independently, try to make sense of the world, they use these same universal, pre-installed archetypes. They don't need to talk to each other, because their brains are already running the same basic software. They all invent a hero's journey. They all create myths about a nurturing Earth Mother and a powerful Sky Father. They all tell stories about a clever trickster who outsmarts the powerful, the real climax. We are all the same. And this leads us to the most powerful and, I think, most beautiful explanation. Jung's archetypes are not just some mystical idea. They are rooted in the shared experience of being human. Why are there so many flood myths? Because for most of human history, people lived near rivers and oceans. A devastating, once-in-a-generation flood would feel like the end of the world. It would destroy your home, your family, your entire reality. So, you tell a story about a world-ending flood to process that trauma and warn future generations. Why the world tree? Because trees are a perfect symbol of life, growth, and connection. Their roots are in the dark earth, their trunks are in our world, and their branches reach for the heavens. It's a natural, intuitive metaphor for the structure of the cosmos. Why are snakes and dragons everywhere? Because snakes are a powerful real-world animal. They shed their skin, so they symbolize rebirth and eternity. They can be venomous, so they symbolize death and danger. They live in the ground, so they connect to the underworld. They are a perfect, ready-made symbol for the duality of good and evil, creation and destruction. The stories aren't identical because aliens told them to us, or because some lost Atlantean survivor whispered them in our ancestors' ear. The stories are similar because we are similar. Our brains are built the same way. Our lives are governed by the same fundamental realities: birth, death, love, fear, the rising of the sun, the coming of winter. So, why do so many ancient cultures share identical myths and symbols? The real answer is probably a mix of everything. Ideas definitely did spread through contact and trade, but the deepest and most universal similarities, the core patterns that resonate across every culture in history, likely come from a much deeper source. They come from the shared wiring of the human brain and the shared experience of living a human life on planet Earth. Our ancestors weren't just copying each other's homework. They were all staring at the same cosmic questions and, using the same mental toolkit, they all came up with strikingly similar answers. The myths show us that, beneath it all, we are one people, telling one grand, epic story about what it means to be alive. If you were fascinated by how our minds created these myths, then you need to see our next video.